What's up, guys? Midwest2 over here back again, out here in the shop. I was watching some YouTube and I was checking out Jimmy Making It Work, his channel. He did dropped a video, I think a couple days ago, maybe it'd been sooner than that. But anyway, he was talking about wrenches, and I thought, you know what, I'm gonna piggyback off what he said. And I haven't made a video in a long time, and I thought he had a really cool video and he covered a lot. And I wanted to piggyback what he was saying, and everything he said I pretty much agree with. So, but I'm going to give you my perspective on wrenches and what I use from a DIY perspective, whereas Jimmy obviously is a professional mechanic with over 40 years of experience. So let's get into it. So in terms of wrenches, right? So what am I doing? Primarily, I'm doing service jobs on my own equipment, maybe friend or family. I do build my own trucks, my toys, like this 58 GMC, which we're building. I've got a 72 C10 that we're doing. So I do get into some pretty heavy stuff. You know, it could be anything from pulling engines, installing engines, swapping engines, transmissions, suspension. I pretty much get into all of it. And that's why I have the amount of tools and the setups that I have. So what do I use in terms of wrenches? Okay, let's get into it. So let's start here in my this is kind of like my primary box because I go in and out of it. Excuse the mess. We've got a lot going on in the shop, so keep the comments. So I got a lot of different wrenches in here. I've got some double box end wrenches from Capri Tools. I love these wrenches here, the double box ends. I don't get a chance to use them as much as I would like. Primarily, I find that if you have a lift or you can get your vehicle up in the air, you're going to be more likely and more inclined to use these. Whereas if you're working off of jack stands and a jack, sometimes these longer wrenches aren't necessarily going to be very useful because you don't have the room. But if you're doing like changing an alternator belt or trying to reach into the engine bay and get some leverage on a bolt that you can get access to, obviously these will help out. These are 12-point design. I also have some Ulsa tools. These are like extractor wrenches. These are cool. Like some of the older vehicles I get, the bolts are really seized on. I live in the Midwest, so they get rusted, they get corroded, and having a good wrench that can kind of bite the bolt in a different manner. These have a really unique profile there, and they help to kind of really put some torque on them. And having a wrench that is lifetime warranty is ideal, especially when you get into those, really seized on type bolts. Your standard combination style wrenches here. These are Craftsman USA. I do like Craftsman USA wrenches. These are professional series, I guess is what they call them back in the day. These are not like, they don't have any special type of jaw or teeth or anything like that. They're just regular open end, box end, standard combination wrenches. But I do like the older Craftsman USA, and you can find these when you can find them. Sometimes they're cheap. Sometimes people ask way more than what they're worth. But if you want a USA made wrench and you can find these for a good price, I would certainly recommend it. Obviously, I've got a lot of Snap-on stuff. This is a regular Snap-on flank drive wrench set. I got up to 3/4. Then I've got a Lonely Craftsman 1-inch. I do live on a farm, and so we do have different types of equipment for mowing and brush hogs and just other kind of equipment that we may need where I have to do service work on them periodically. So having some larger size wrenches is ideal for me. Not for everybody. Not saying every DIYer is going to need to have 1 1/4, 1 1/2, and so on. But for me, for my lifestyle, I do need that. I got some cheaper Craftsman. These are not USA, but they're just regular. Oh, maybe they are. I didn't realize that. These are USA made. I think I have some that are not. But these are the line wrenches. Like Jimmy said, Snap-on makes a really good line wrench. I will agree with that, they don't spread. These here, the larger sizes don't typically spread. The smaller sizes do. And then once again, that's going to be largely dependent on how seized or how stuck on the bolt is. But these here are just fine. And it didn't cost a lot of money. I think I maybe paid like $5 or $10 on an auction site. Lines, crow's feet, obviously I have the Snap-on version of those. I specifically sought out to get these because I said if I was ever going to need a crow's foot line wrench, I wanted to have the best that I could afford. Now, I was smart about how I bought my stuff. So everything that you see is pretty much bought used. I don't pretty much buy anything new. If I can find it for used from an auction site, an estate sale, a pawn shop, that's primarily where I'm going to go get it. And so that's why when you look at my wrench set, you'll kind of understand that. But like these here, I don't use these all the time. But if you're, working underneath an engine and you don't have a lot of room, maybe there's other things that are in the way. I have fairly large hands. So for me, I need something that I can kind of, grab and have a good grip onto, and I can get in there and do my job and get in and get out without tearing up my hands, which typically never happens. So what I do have that set, I think they go down. Let me see, the smallest one I have here is 1/4 inch, and that will go all the way up to, what is it, 3/4 of an inch? No, 13 sixteenths. So 13 sixteenths is the largest size in that set there. Moving on, here's the next drawer. And you'll see I have a lot of different wrenches. Once again, another style of extractor wrenches. I bought these not because I needed them or anything like that. I bought them to kind of do a comparison to some other brands. This is a simple like $30 set off of Amazon. And believe it or not, they work really, really well. For an extractor wrench, for, not having to use it daily, that's a pretty good set to pick up. If you're ever, once again, you're working in a confined space and you need to have a little bit of ability to ratchet, you don't put a lot of torque on these anyway. I know Jimmy was talking about having thrown an extender or something like that, or a breaker bar to try to get some leverage. I haven't ran across that scenario yet personally, but I can see how that does make sense. Now, the only thing I don't like about these from Ulsa Tools is that they're 6-point. Now, if they had been 12-point, I think that'd have been much better. They do kind of have like a flank drive type profile in there to kind of get some extra leverage. Now, if you do have low profile sockets, these are really cool because they kind of grip those like, what brand is that? I can't think of the brand, but they have the very low profile ones, and these will grip those pretty well. So, but these are flex heads. So as long as you don't need a lot of torque, you can use these to kind of get in some nice confined spaces as well. And I don't think the set's very expensive. My preferred stubby wrench is going to be these Craftsman ones here. These are old Craftsman USA from back in the day. I'm not sure who made these for Craftsman or if they made them themselves, but these are really, really nice wrenches. Once again, you're not putting a lot of torque on them, but they are very stout, very strong. And they typically, whenever they come up on the market, they are very expensive. People know that these are good wrenches for some reason, and you never can get them for dirt cheap. I managed to find some for what I felt were reasonably priced. But yeah, this is a good set to get. And like I said, I sought them out specifically trying to find those. I've got those in both metric and SAE. Here's another set of Craftsman USA wrenches. Once again, they don't have any, they're just standard combination wrenches. They don't have any teeth or anything like that. This is a metric set here, whereas the other set I showed you guys was SAE. Got a couple random moon wrenches over here. I won these at an auction. Not that I ever felt like I was going to need them, but most people, like Jimmy said, even he doesn't use these very often. From a DIY perspective, I don't know that I would either, but I won an auction. These were in the set, and it was like $10 for the whole group of wrenches there, so I went on and grabbed them. Something I do use quite often, though, these specifically these are Easy Red. These are 12 points on double box end ratcheting. These here, they're like the right length, and if I'm doing like brake job or something like that, these I can get in, and they're not too long where I feel like I'm going to hit everything in it will well, but they're not too small either where I can't take advantage of leverage. I keep a couple of these. Well, these is really all that I could find when I got them at an auction, but they work out pretty well. And then I had this random 10 millimeter double box end, which I have a full set of these, but this was just like another auction win there. So let me see here. I gotta remember where I keep everything at. So some wrenches that, like Jimmy said, now I don't think, especially a DIYer, you don't need to go out and buy top of the line wrenches like Snap-on or Mac or nothing like that. I will say, If you can find them for cheap, where if you look at what they're asking for them and compare them to some other mid-tier brands, if you can get them for that price or less, then obviously it makes sense to grab them, right? But I would not recommend a DIYer going out buying really, really expensive wrenches at retail prices, because most of the time you're never going to be putting the wrench through that repetitive use where you're going to need a wrench with high-end steel, high quality steel. You're not going to be beating up on it. You're not going to be putting breaker bars on it. You're not going to be, interlocking the wrenches, the box end to the open end to try to get more leverage. You're just never going to see that type of use. Most people don't. Most guys, they're sitting at home watching football games. They're not really wrenching like that from a DIY perspective. But for the guys that are, you have to be able to judge how much use you're going to put on that wrench and, compare that to what the cost you're going to pay for it. Now, I said all that to say like this here. These are Mac precision torque wrenches. These are not USA made. These are made in Taiwan. They do have the teeth in there, I guess, if you want to call it. They're a little bit different than the flank drive. But these, I think on the tool truck, they're not terribly expensive, maybe $300-400 for a set of them. I'm not sure. I didn't buy those. I bought the full set of metric and a full set of SAE for, I think it was like $150. Now that's a once in a lifetime deal, but the guy was really wanting some money for some reason, and I was really wanting the wrenches, and so we came to an agreement on them. But these here are nice. They get a good length to them. They got that nice 15-degree offset on the box end. I think the same thing is true on the open end. Same thing is true on the box end. These are really nice wrenches, but like I said, if you can't get them for the right price, I would not recommend a DIYer seeking out to buy them. And that set goes up to 1 or 32 millimeter, and the other set goes up to 1 1/4. You see here, I got they call them midget wrenches from Snap-on. Once again, these are a little bit smaller than your traditional short wrench. You can see there in terms of length. Once again, there's a lot of good brands out there. There's Ulsa Tools, there's Capri Tools, there's Gear Wrench. You don't have to go out there and get the Snap-on or the Mac Tools. I bought these because I got them really, really cheap. And you guys know my channel. Anybody who follows my channel knows that I'm like a pro when it comes to finding cheap, really expensive tools, but for very, very low prices. And once again, I'm a DIYer, so unlike a professional mechanic, I have time at my disposal. I don't need to have them right then and there. Whereas someone else who's a professional mechanic, they may need a stubby wrench, and they may need it right now, so they have no choice to jump on a tool truck. Me, on the other hand, I can take my time and spend a month or two or whatever to find what I'm looking for. Here's the Craftsman ones that are not USA made. These are just the cheap ones. Once again, these line wrenches here are not very strong on the jaw. But then again, if you needed something, if the fastener wasn't super, super tight, these would do just fine. And they're not very expensive. Here's the Snap-on short wrench. That's the midget wrench. This is the short wrench. Once again, these are Flank Drive Plus, or the Flank Drive, whatever you want to call them. You'll see this repeated throughout my wrench setup. Just know that I didn't spend a lot of money on them. So, and the same thing is repeated over here on the SAE side as well. Now, what is different, as you see, I've got some line wrenches here. I think these are Craftsman US. No, these are Japan. So these are TTC or something like that. I'm not even sure. Got them at an auction, but I didn't have any of these, and so $5 for a set of line wrenches is not bad. I think these are Craftsman USA. Yeah, these are here, and they go up a little bit bigger sizes. But once again, if you're finding this stuff cheap, you can grab it, and you're not spending a whole lot of money. Now, I do have some older style ratcheting ones. These are okay. Typically, I would use something like this if, let's say, for instance, I need to help somebody out in the field or whatever, or even fix my own equipment. I have tractors that go down every once in a while in use, and so I have to run back to my shop and grab tools. If I'm going to be working in a very dirty environment, I'll use something like this, because a lot of those other ratcheting wrenches, if they get a lot of dirt and grime in the gear mechanism, you basically have to disassemble the wrench in order to get that crap out. Otherwise, it's going to bind up and it's going to cause problems. Something like this, I know these are like inspired by the military. You can use them in really, really contaminated environments. You can just simply spray them out with some parts cleaner and throw a little bit more lubricant on there after you're done, and these things work fine. So they're very, very useful for very unclean environments. So if you're going to be working in grime and grit, you want to get yourself some of these. I know that they're, the teeth mechanism are not anything great. Maybe that's 36 tooth or something like that. But I'm also a believer that these larger pawls or gear mechanisms are much stronger wrenches than the high tooth count, like the 90 tooth, 120 tooth designs. Is great for having very minimal movement, you required, but at the same time, they're nowhere near as strong as some of these mechanisms that have larger mechanical gears. I also have, I don't use it very often, but I do have, let me go back. This is another set of, this is Cornwell as well. These are combination wrenches. I got these for like 15 bucks or something like that on an auction win. Just regular combination wrenches. But once again, I bought them because they were Cornwell and because I got them really, really cheap. If they had been $150, $200, I would not have bought them, and nor would I recommend you to buy them, especially if you're a DIYer looking for a wrench. Go get yourself something cheaper than that. Here's something that I do use occasionally, not every day. I have to really think about using them, meaning that I've never came across an application where I'm like, I need this particular style of wrench, or else I can't get the job done. But these are those angle wrenches. You have 4 different profiles you can use. Cornwell set, once again, I got all 3 of those sets, I believe, together. I think the total spend was like $25, if I remember correctly. But this is something that can be useful, but from a DIYer perspective, if you're just doing your daily maintenance on your vehicles, you're probably not going to find a lot of use or need of these. But if you can get them dirt cheap, why not add them to your arsenal? Let's see what else we got. Oh, the shop cat. All right. That's all sockets. Here's another set. Now, if you're looking for, you say, okay, James, you talked about the expensive wrenches. What are some good mid-tier brands? I stand by Capri Tools. Everybody knows Capri Tools is a channel sponsor, so I get a chance to test their tools out. I've been running their sockets for the last couple of years, never broke one, never had any issues. I recently got back into their wrenches, so I don't have a whole lot of time on these, but for the cost, the build quality, the weightiness of the tool, the design of the tool, I think they did a really, really nice job. They don't have a flink drive profile. They are thicker than like your Snap-on, but that's probably because they're not quite as strong, but I have no way to prove that. So that's just an opinion. Typically when manufacturers, especially if it's an offshore tool, when it's thicker, heavier built, it's not because it's a better wrench per se, but rather they try to offset some of the strength by adding more material, and that kind of beefs up. It's like a cheaper way to achieve a better performing tool. And so this particular one here, this Capri set goes up to, I think, 24 millimeters. Really, really nice. Your standard combination wrench set, like I said, nothing special, no frills, no thrills. But the price point makes these very, very desirable. And based upon other things that I've used from Capri Tools, I feel like this would be a really nice wrench set to get. And it comes with a nice foam tray, and you don't skip any sizes. So, if you're a DIYer, that's another thing you need to consider as well. Buy wrench sets that are complete. Don't be buying things that are missing 16 and 14 and 8 and all that. Get the most complete wrench set that you can possibly find, because that's going to be your best bet. A wrench, or a kind of a wrench, I guess you want to call it, adjustable wrench, something that I use a lot. I have a lot of these laying around the shop. I like adjustable wrenches. I've got a couple different brands here. Right Tools, also a channel sponsor, so I've got a few of their stuff around, but you can see I put these tools through the test. I like adjustable wrenches because, like Jimmy said, if you're ever working, like doing suspension work where you're adjusting, you're doing alignment jobs or something like that, where you need to have you have multiple larger size bolts or socket or nuts that you're trying to break free or move around, tighten, loosen, and you don't want to be running back and forth grabbing multiple wrenches. Something like an adjustable wrench is really good. Snap-on owns the game when it comes to adjustable wrenches. I'll show you that here in a minute, but Snap-on makes the best, and that's because of the jaw profile, not because of the tolerances or nothing like that within the design overall. It's because of that flink drive feature that they incorporate. I do have some thin wrenches, like Jimmy said, they call them tappet wrenches. Anyone who's older knows that that's the name. They just refer to them as thin wrenches nowadays. I have a couple different cheaper brands. I didn't want to go out and buy an expensive set. I was looking at the Capri set. I had the Capri set back in the day. I sold all a bunch of stuff, and then I kind of got back into it again. And so when I got back, I was like, well, what am I going to get? And these Cornwell ones came up on an auction site. And so once again, I bought them. I said, well, they're cheap, and I could get those for the same price as I could, like a Capri Tools or something like that. So that's pretty much the wrenches in this particular box here. Moving on to this is my primary box. This is where the money is at. Anybody who knows the channel knows this is where the majority of what I own in terms of value is going to be. All of this stuff is all Snap-on. The same things apply. Buy this stuff cheap, man. If you can't get it for cheap, you want a good brand. Look at other brands out there. I don't really like Gear Wrench per se, and I'll tell you why in a minute. I like Capri. I even like Cobalt. I think Gear Wrench, in my opinion, is kind of like third tier comparative to some of these other brands. And the reason why is because the Gear Wrench Chrome sucks. It likes to flake. That's one of the things I've seen. And they're not as strong as some other brands of the same price point in terms of the open end. Now, the box ends are always pretty much on par with each other, with one another. But the open end, not saying that you're going to be putting a lot of torque on the open end all the time. Most of the time, you're going to probably be using the box end to break things free and then kind of work it off with the other side, especially for a standard combination wrench. But Gear Wrench, I'm just not a fan of Gear Wrench tools. And maybe I have a little bit of impartiality towards that, but I just don't like them. But like all this stuff here, like I said, it's pretty much all Snap-on and Mac. I got this stuff super, super cheap, and that's why I have it. Anything from ratcheting wrenches, I would tell a DIYer, get yourself a set of ratcheting wrenches. I don't really care what brand it is. These are Snap-on, just happen to be what it's in this box. But there's Cobalt, there's Capri Tools, there's Olsa Tools. Get yourself a nice set of ratcheting wrenches. If you can, get the one with the selector here, because like everybody tells you, you can get yourself in a situation where you're breaking something free and then you get yourself in a bind. And if you don't have the ability to reverse course, you may find yourself in a really, really bad predicament. Not done that yet, but I can see myself doing it. So that's just where it's at. Something else you probably won't ever need, but I have a few of them, are these torque adapter wrenches. Occasionally you may need them if you're trying to like reach down and then go over or around something. These could probably help you out. I got these for like a couple bucks a piece. That's why I grabbed them. I'm hope to be able to build a complete set of these one day. But this one of those kind of wrenches where you don't need it every day, but if you can get it for the right price, just add it to your box. Like that's one thing I would recommend anyone does or do, no matter if you're a professional mechanic or a DIYer. If you can find a good tool at a cheap price, buy it, even if you don't need it. If you don't need it for 10 years, it doesn't matter. Buy it, put it in the box, and forget about it. Because that one day when you need to have that specialized tool, you're going to be glad that you did it. And I've come across that scenario countless times, more times than I can count, that I was like, oh my God, if I had never bought that tool, it would have been much more difficult of a job. Moving on, these are some overflows here. Once again, I've got more. These are Snap-on. Just overlook the brand. These are just short wrenches. I got those for a good price, and so I picked them up. I also got the standard combination wrenches. Once again, I try to get. Most DIYers will be limited on size. I would say go get wrenches and get the largest size you can. So keep going up. Don't stop at 19. Don't stop at 3/4. Keep going. Get multiple sizes, because that one time you think that you don't need that 1.25 is the time you're going to need that 1.25. I've worked on some F-150s where the bolts were super small. I've worked on some Chrysler Sebrings when the bolts were really, really big. There's no rhyme or reason why manufacturers use the sizes that they do in some cases, because it didn't make sense to me at the time. Maybe there is some logic to it, but I was glad that I had enough of a range and sizes to cover what I needed. So I would always say, talking about wrenches, get Try to build your sets out. Go up as far as you possibly can, because you may find yourself needing a larger size one day. You can see a theme here where I've got more of those utilitarian style ratcheting wrenches is what I refer to them as, because they're, like I said, they're more for caustic environments. It doesn't hurt to grab you some of those. And these snap-on ones here, you can pick these up for cheap, because most people, like most professional mechanics, don't like these because they're not working in those really nasty environments, you know, like where they're in sand and dirt and whatnot. And so they're working in the shop, so they really don't see value to these. And so you can get these for cheap. Every time I've ever seen them, even on auction sites, they don't go for very much money. So grab a set of those. I'm trying to think of all my wrenches. I think that's pretty much it. I've got some other wrenches. Oh, let me show you the flank drive on these here. So I said these are the best, and I mean that. Nothing against Right Tool, nothing against anyone else, but that feature there, the teeth, is what makes a difference in these. Being able to use an adjustable wrench is awesome to begin with, but having the ability to use put more leverage, it makes it so much. This is a very joyful tool to use, and that may sound kind of lame, but having teeth in these things work really, really nice. Now, if you don't want to buy snap-on, you say, well, you know, James, you're recommending that, and those are expensive. Go check out Baco, which Snap-on owns, and get yourself like this set here, where the jaw comes out. You have your teeth version there, all right, and the lower jaw comes out. If I can do it with one hand here, and then you can slide it back in, and then bam, you got your standard. So if you're working with, like, you know, like a fuel line or AN fitting, you want to use a smooth jaw, you can flip it over for that. And then if you work with something that's a little bit more, you know, tougher, well, don't mind marring up the fastener, you can flip the jaw around and use the teeth version. These are typically cheaper, much cheaper than like your Snap-on. So same wrench, you just put them side by side. They are the same. Every detail is all the same, right down to how they mark the rubber handles, all the same. So just buy yourself a Baco wrench and you get the benefits that you would find on a Snap-on wrench. So, but yeah, like I said, I agree with what Jimmy said about the wrenches. I don't recommend anybody going out buying super expensive wrenches if you're a DIYer, because like I said, you're typically not going to find yourself needing some of those features that mechanics need. Mechanics need things to be reliable, highly reliable, work as when they need it to work. They don't have time to be tearing up hardware and other things like that. It's going to cost the business more money, or lengthen the time to get the job done. So they need things that have special features that work. You as a DIYer, you may not necessarily need that type of performance, so you can get away with buying like Capri tools or Ulsa tools. That's perfectly fine. Now, if you can find the higher end stuff on an auction site like highbid.com or an estate sale or a pawn shop, and the price point is comparable to what you would spend for a Capri or an Ulsa tool, then I would say get them, because it's better to have the higher end stuff if you can afford it, than to buy the mid-tier stuff. And then, like I said, you know, I talked about warranty process. I've worked with Snap-on corporate. I bought used tools from Snap-on dealers. I bought them online, and I've never had any issue getting things warrantied out. I just follow the letter of the law, and Snap-on takes care of me. Same thing with Matco, same thing with Mac Tool. Never had any issue. The only place I have not warranted a tool with, it's been Cornwell. But that's coming up because I got a ratchet that's completely trashed, and I need to get this one warrantied out. So, but yeah, that's what I would recommend, guys. Hope this video is informative for somebody. It's not necessarily meant for mechanics, but maybe some insight can be gained from this. But for DIYers specifically, just think about how you're going to use the tool, what level of performance you need, and how much money you want to spend, and then make your purchase. All right, guys, I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.